So what have I been doing in the lockdown? Well, paperwork, by and large paperwork. Trying, as they say, gravely and somberly to put my affairs in order. Well, my affairs are a real muddle and piles of paperwork, and I have a curious inability to be able to fill in a form. I look at a question and see so many possible meanings to it that I cannot determine whether in fact I should say yes to it or no to it or whatever. It's very difficult stuff for a simple country boy like me. Paperwork, not enough gardening. But I am going to get on. And I've been doing a bit of reading. I finally managed to catch up on Wolf Hall, Hilary Mantle's Wolf Hall, and I've got Bring Up the Bodies, and I've got the third of that volume, of that series, coming up, arriving sometime today. Oh, delivery service here on the Isle of Man, wonderful. You know, the postmen, the postwomen, the delivery drivers, they've really kept this island ticking over wonderfully. And my thanks to them, because otherwise I wouldn't have Bring Up the Bodies, actually. Or this one, The Lost Book of Moses. This is a glorious story by this fellow Chanantige, and it's real Indiana Jones stuff. A man called Shapira turned up at the British Museum and said, "What I have here is the earliest copy of Deuteronomy in the world, and it's different from the other parts of Deuteronomy." And of course, the 5 books of Moses have a very special status in religion because they were dictated by God, and therefore everything that is in them is His word rather than authorial storytelling or anything like that. So if you have an early version, you know, that is significantly different from the standard Torah and the Old Testament that we have followed, then you've got some real interest. Anyway, I won't tell you what happened, because you should really read this book for yourself. It's fascinating. And our poor old Shapira ends up in a Belgian hotel with his revolver, and, well, I won't tell you the rest of it. But a great story. Great story. And this one I've enjoyed as well. The Astronomer and the Witch. The great mathematician and astronomer, Kepler, had to take a year off, essentially, to defend his mother from a charge of witchcraft. Europe, in this particular period, this is just the run-up to the 30 Years' War. So this is the period roughly 1500 to 1530. Early Tudor period. Witches are still plaguing the continent. Witches have to be found out. Witches have to be burned. And it is a very dangerous thing to be charged with witchcraft. And that Kepler should be, I mean, who is one of the intellectual giants, it's a fascinating story. The one thing that I got from this book, which I also get from Mantle, is how lucky we are not to be living in these very small, closed societies. You know, the little town or the little city where you are parents were born, committed misdemeanors when they were young, you know, married, had you, and every detail of your life is known and observed and talked about. And the same thing happens here in Mantle's book. Wonderful evocation of the closeness of the court, of the ruling classes of the Tudor period. I mean, Shakespeare is bedeviled with it, of course, himself. You know, his father was a very successful man, petitioned for a patent of nobility, and then things went wrong, and he ended up bankrupt. And in many ways, Shakespeare's life is about showing Stratford that he, William Shakespeare, of the Shakespeare family, is as good as, if not better, than them. But everybody knows everything, you know. His daughter, well, that's a different story. Maybe I shouldn't tell that one. Anyway, so that's, oh, and there's one other thing. I heard and bought this. A fellow called Carlo Tessarini, 1690, and he died sometime after December 1766. He's a Baroque, probably a Venetian now that I think about it. Everyone played in Venice in those days. Never heard of him before. Lovely music, really enjoyed it. Somebody told me the other day that there are still about 120 odd pieces by Vivaldi that have never been recorded or published. And one laments that. And yet when you think about it, there's probably a good reason why they aren't published. They're probably just not that good or not that great. Vivaldi's, I love Vivaldi. He's such a paradox, isn't he? He, of course, has to become a priest in order to enter into that world of religious music and things like that. Never actually conducted a mass. Certainly had a mistress, and ends up dying excommunicate. Can you imagine a priest dying excommunicated? And what would heaven do? I mean, the genius of Vivaldi, yeah, knocking at the pearly gates and Peter saying, no, can't have you in here, you're excommunicated. But, and God would be saying, oh, I've got to make an exception here, I think. I mean, Vivaldi, come on. The Four Seasons, oh, and some of those other, oh, wonderful. Incidentally, the wonderful Jesuit poet, Manly Hopkins, he had this dilemma with Henry Purcell, who, of course, was an English Protestant. He, the Jesuit, the upholder of a belief that, in fact, Protestants are heretics and, by definition, barred from heaven, has this problem that he loves the music of Purcell. He writes, "Have fair fallen, O fair, fair have fallen, so dear to me, so arch especial a spirit as lives in Henry Purcell." And I think that one ends up with God, lover of souls, protect thy creature dear, O where it fails, being so mighty a father and fond. I hope that is the end of that poem. I sometimes get these things wrong, but it's a lovely thought.